Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Rumours around the future of Adrian Newey have kicked into overdrive today, with reports emerging that he has officially handed in his letter of resignation to Red Bull, and the announcement is due imminently. Big discussions today on exactly why he's left the team, and also rumours as to why he is potentially already declining offers from other teams, notably from Mercedes, and an apparent reason from Newey that Toto Wolff will not necessarily want to hear. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, Aston Martin, again, they've lodged an appeal over the Alonso penalty back in China. To be fair to Aston Martin, whether they're right or wrong, they at least do defend their drivers. Whenever anything happens, they will launch a complaint. Whether it goes anywhere or not is another question, but Alonso was given a 10-second penalty and, crucially probably, 3 penalty points on the licence for the collision with Sainz during the sprint in China. Now, Aston Martin say this wasn't fair, we want a right of review for this one. The issue is with the right of review, you have to prove there is more evidence. I think this penalty was very harsh. You could even argue this was just straight up fair and hard racing. The stewards disagreed. It's still a big grey area in this sport as to what the racing rules even actually are, because I've seen far worse than this, to be honest, I think, go unpunished over the last couple of years. But whatever, stewards are going to be stewards, I guess, and especially with the FIA and Formula 1 right now, there are big questions on that. But this was the instant during the sprint. Alonso pushed him off the track, they made contact, 10-second penalty, 3 penalty points on the licence. Aston clearly don't think this was fair. They believe they have more to say on the matter. The issue is that to make the stewards change their minds, you have to provide new evidence that was unavailable at the time. And, well, I don't know if they have that. They must believe they do, because otherwise it will just get thrown out by the FIA, which is usually what happens. And you have to pay money now to the FIA to even launch a complaint like this. So Aston Martin must believe they have some cause for recourse, I suppose, on this one. But we've got to dive into Mercedes and certainly the Newey piece in a second. They're also looking at what potentially could be their future driver. This is Kimi Antonelli yesterday, and also he's there today, I believe, testing the W13 in Imola. So that's pretty cool to see. These were his lap times as well. I know this caused a fair bit of intrigue just to see how he was getting on. Sure, you can compare these times to the W13 when it was actually there, or even looking at the 2020 cars or whatever, like how rapid they were around the circuits, the pre-ground effect cars towards the end of that regulation cycle. But it's different track conditions, it's different fuel loads, it's different tyres, you guys know how it goes. But I will say, some of the numbers here I thought were particularly impressive from Antonelli. Look, it is just consistency, we don't know how hard he was pushing, but, you know, 21.9, 21.9, 21.9, 22.0, 21.9, 21.9, 21.9, 21.7, 21.9. I mean, that was his first stint. His second stint was slightly faster, but also incredibly consistent lap times. Antonelli's a cracking driver, there's no doubt about it, and I think that probably after this test, Mercedes will feel that even more so than previously. The question is, when can they get him in a car? I think they want to get him in Formula 1, especially Toto Wolff does, ASAP. There was discussion from Joe Sauer the other day, they might be trying to get him in the car literally in like 2 weeks for Imola. But in order to achieve that, they would have to, because he's not 18, get an exemption from the FIA. So Joe Sauer was basically saying there's rumours to this effect, and now Motorsport Italy are saying that there's some that claim that Toto has actually asked for this exemption already. So I don't know if there really is anything behind this, and look, the Italian media, take it as you will, but the feeling is that James Vowles is a big fan of Kimi Antonelli as well. The idea of getting him in the Williams for Logan Sargent mid-season would be quite attractive, I think, from multiple angles. But there are problems because Antonelli isn't 18 until October, so they would need to get the FIA to make an exemption in this case. Apparently they might have tried, but that is purely speculation. Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes team actually today in New York doing stuff like this. I mean, here's the W12 doing some donuts with Lewis Hamilton on the streets of New York City because of this big partnership, of course, they've got going on with WhatsApp. So, yeah, I'm not sure that's necessarily going to be enough to impress Adrian Newey, but this car in the foreground here that, you know, might be the new upgrade package for the W15, that is now what the emoji in WhatsApp looks like. So instead of the old car emoji, it's now actually a Mercedes. It's a pretty cool activation, to be fair, but as I say, I don't think Adrian Newey is seeing this and thinking, wow, yeah, let me join Mercedes, that is the team to be at. But it seems inevitable now he will leave Red Bull. There has been lots of discussion on this over the last few days. I don't often listen to what Ralf Schumacher has to say, but I thought this was interesting. Red Bull is falling apart. The sole responsibility for this lies with Christian Horner, who is holding on to power with all of his might. He expects Red Bull to sink into mediocrity within 2 years, because if Newey leaves, who's next, right? Is Marco next? Is Verstappen next? Like, what is the future? It wasn't long ago we heard rumours that Horner is confident that even without Newey, even without Max, he can still form a competitive team that can win championships. Maybe that is going to get put to the test over the coming years based on what we are presently seeing, because Newey's departure, which seems at this point inevitable, absolutely will call into question Max Verstappen's opinion on where the future of that team lies. So F1 Insider this morning put an article out to say that Red Bull will officially announce Newey's departure today. Now it's 5 PM pretty much here in the UK right now, and it's not been announced yet, so it may happen later on, but as of recording, it's not yet been made official. And F1 Insider, the sources on this can be somewhat questionable. But I think really the feeling of this article is that Newey's departure has now been communicated internally, and it's really a question of time as to when that's going to come out externally. There was also a talk in the article that he is said to have reached an agreement with Red Bull to be released earlier from his contract, right? Because his contract ends at the end of 2025. The discussion was, well, if Red Bull keep him locked down until the end of that deal, then he's got a 1-year gardening leave blocking period, as is described. Then he could only work for a team in 2027, which is probably not ideal for any team. Neither, of course, for Newey himself. So the belief is that he has been able to, and agree with Red Bull, and potentially with a new team that he might want to join, negotiate an earlier end to the contract, such that his 1-year gardening leave will begin as soon as possible, and therefore he can join another team as soon as possible, or just, sail off into the sunset as soon as possible, depending what he actually wants to do. And even Dr. Obbs comments on this and says, the source might not be great, but he has heard from several separate people that he was not asked to work on the RB17. This was created for him as an outlet away from F1, that hypercar project, of course, that Newey seems pretty keen to not just work on F1 cars, especially when he might not be the biggest fan of the upcoming circular regulations. So whatever team he was to join, if he is to, will have to, make some concessions, but I'm sure they'll be willing to do so. So this is when Autosport themselves, they come out and say the same thing. So it's not just F1 Insider saying this, although they said it was going to happen today. Autosport now say that the departure is imminent. So the other day we had Autosport, we had MUS, we had Andrew Benton for the BBC, all saying this is a done deal, and now we're hearing that it's imminent. It's going to be announced ahead of the Miami Grand Prix, which of course, media day in Miami is in a couple of days, right? It's on a Thursday. So presumably, if this is going to be announced, it's going to be announced very soon indeed. Kamal Sengal as well then goes on to say the Newey business is now becoming official. Newey has submitted his resignation effective today. So apparently this is now a done deal, because the other day there were rumours that, the reports that were becoming public were kind of catching Newey and the team by surprise. They weren't aware, potentially neither was he, that this was becoming public. Apparently, though, as of today, that resignation letter has now been made official, and for whatever reason, Newey is now departing the outfit. That's what Motorsport Total go on to say as well, that he has formally handed in his notice to leave Red Bull. The article also goes on to explain what they believe are at least part of the reasons why Newey has made this call. Part of it, we think, is the personal relationship with Horner. Mark Hughes from the race said that actually that's basically everything as to why this is happening. And obviously partly that's allegation related after what we saw back at the start of February. But in addition, there's also this piece. Newey has communicated the reasons for his decision in an internal letter. So it would be fascinating to know what that was. And we're going to have some speculation on it. A decisive factor is said to have been his broken relationship with Horner, and also an interview that Horner gave to Motorsport Italy at the end of 2023. In the interview, Horner said that the technical team, led by Pierre Wache, not Adrian Newey, is doing a wonderful job, so they are not so dependent on Newey. So this is very fascinating. This was the article actually in question at the time, when Horner said that the team is not so reliant on Newey. He has the ability to come in, come out and work on other projects. And I think that's part of the evolution of the team, and saying that, Wache leads the team. Sure, Newey is the chief technical officer, but, we're evolving as a team. We're evolving past the need for Newey was effectively the argument. And Newey, look, he's a pretty soft-spoken guy. But I think anyone could understand that Newey might be sitting there thinking, damn, I designed the entire suspension for the car in 2022, and I've set you guys up for success over the last couple of years, and now I'm getting sideline pushed off to the RB17 or whatever. And Amanda, his wife, it's kind of funny that we have to read into what Newey might be thinking because of what his wife says, but at the time she said, what a load of hogwash, which I imagine is referring to the words of Horner, right, rather than the article, because I don't think she can really deny the quotes that were said because it was an interview. So I imagine she must be referring to his comments as, it's completely BS, that the team is no longer reliant on Adrian, which obviously would make sense for his wife to say in the first place. So there was also this that was noted by I know Daniel put this on Twitter as well, that she'd liked a tweet from late last year that said from Craig, imagine being Adrian Newey right now, wrote and sung the theme tune, but Horner bags the credit. And she liked that tweet. So the implication is that Newey was not satisfied by the way that Horner was handling things already, and then possibly the nail in the coffin was the allegations at the start of February on the way that he'd been handling personal matters behind the scenes with the personal assistant that also served Adrian Newey, we believe, at Red Bull. So it's clearly an absolute mess. Those may be the reasons why Newey wants to depart. The other question, though, of course, is where next for Newey and why he might have already ruled out some other options. Retirement, of course, is an option. I think that he would never retire from designing cars. I think that he's always going to want to be designing something. Whether he retires from designing Formula One cars is a possibility. I don't think you're going to see Newey, sitting back and kicking his feet up and just chilling for the rest of his days. He's going to be working on something. It's the nature of people like Newey, of course. But he might be working in Formula One. Depends what offer and potential options he has on the table. So this was the latest words from Andrew Benson from the BBC, who wrote these this morning, or in an article that was released this morning. Newey's decision to leave Red Bull, reported by BBC Sport last week, is one of the most seismic events to happen in Formula One for a long time. That's not just for what it says about the internal issues at Red Bull over the allegations with regard to Horner, but also of the impact it will have on the team he leaves and the team he chooses to join, which implies that he is going to join another team, right? It doesn't say if he joins another team, it says he's going to leave and he's going to join. Newey is rightly regarded as the greatest F1 designer in history, so even if he is not full-time on F1 these days, he will have a huge impact on any team he joins, and losing cannot but hurt the one that he leaves. You can see the effect that he's had on setting the concept in this latest generation of Red Bulls. He has been made offers by Ferrari and Aston Martin. I am told by sources close to him that he is seriously considering Ferrari, but is not interested in going to Aston Martin, and will describe why that might be the case in a couple of seconds. But I would not rule out somebody else coming in for him. Not every team could afford him, but McLaren and Mercedes certainly could. And going there would be less disruptive domestically because it could stay in the UK for Newey, even if it would not have the same romantic draw. So Ferrari and Aston, those have been the two teams in main conversation, and apparently he's not going to go to Aston, but he is seriously considering the Ferrari offer, which remains the most likely by far candidate as it stands. So then we get today this massive article here from motorsport.com discussing this apparently imminent departure. So basically they say, yeah, Newey's out of there. MUS reported this first. Following talks with his squad, it's understood that he has now formally submitted his resignation, and the focus will be on the terms of that departure. This is also said as well, as we saw earlier, that the plan will be for him to leave Red Bull no time after the beginning of 2025, because his contract runs until the end of 2025, so he will want to leave as soon as possible, because then his 1 year expected gardening leave period will not last that long. Ideally, for Ferrari or for Merc or Aston or McLaren, whoever potentially wants to get him, he would leave today, and then if there was a 1 year gardening leave period, he could still then join with plenty of time to work on the 2026 regulations. If his contract does end at the start of 2025, not the end of the world, he could join Ferrari 1st of January 2026, but it's still not ideal. So there will be a negotiation there in play. But also this does imply Newey probably wants to work somewhere else, you would think, rather than just retire, if he's trying to negotiate leaving earlier so that potentially he can go elsewhere after the gardening leave periods. That's kind of just speculation though, but then we go on to talk about the things that we mentioned earlier. The big thing though really was what is said as follows. They actually mention here the Amanda Newey quote that we just mentioned. The interview apparently did not go down well with Newey and was apparently perceived by him as Horner wanting to make himself important and minimise the contribution of others to the team's success. Then the point is, where does he go, right? What next for Newey, assuming that he does go somewhere else? He is 65, he won't be in the job for the next 19 years, as was the case at Red Bull. What's more, he reportedly does not have a particularly high opinion of Toto Wolff, and also apparently it's said that Newey believes it would take too long to set the necessary course to put Mercedes back on the road to victory. So I mean, even Adrian Newey, who has looked at that car and he's dialed in the notebook, apparently he is looking at Mercedes and saying, even I can't fix that, I can't fix that car, I can't fix that team, and it would be apparently too much effort as far as Newey believes. Like, he thinks Mercedes are on such a downward spiral, and that maybe they don't have the strength in depth of technical staff they once did, that Newey joining Mercedes is not going to be a silver bullet to make them, winning dominant championships yet again. I'm sure he would help, of course. I mean, Newey would be a massive draw to Mercedes, but he believes that Merc are not the place to go because they're in such a downward spiral that to save them from that would be apparently effectively too much effort for Newey, or it would take too long really. It wouldn't necessarily be too much effort, but Newey believes that it would potentially take years to set them on the course back to victory. And apparently he doesn't even rate Toto Wolff, which is, if this is true, we don't know if this is true, obviously it's speculation, but if this is true, then Newey doesn't really think Toto Wolff is an especially good team principal, and that's the reason why he doesn't want to join, at least in part. It's quite the statement to make, isn't it? Because many drivers and commentators have said over time about Toto that sure, it's not like he lucked into his success. He obviously made many good decisions, but fundamentally Toto is a businessman, and his his investment in the team is from a massively financial perspective. And there has been talk that, Fred Vasseur, for example, he's like a proper team principal. Toto's kind of like a businessman in the team principal role, and maybe Newey feels like that, maybe he doesn't. There's also the Aston Martin piece. Lawrence Stroll is waving his checkbook at Aston Martin, and of course Dan Fallows, a long-time colleague of Newey's at Red Bull, is already there. However, Newey has earned enough money, the money isn't so relevant. For him, it's about doing things that he enjoys. It's also rumours that Newey is rather reserved towards Lawrence Stroll, and is therefore not considering the Canadian's financially attractive offer. Also, he does not like the idea that Stroll could drive up the market value of Aston with Newey as an asset and then potentially sell the team for a profit, which is an interesting observation if Newey feels this way. It's kind of interesting we're hearing all this stuff, isn't it, to be honest, of what Newey supposedly believes, but it's not unreasonable to believe this way. I mean, Stroll's already selling stakes of his team to, Saudi Arabian investment, stuff like this. There have been rumours for some time that may become a full sale at some point, so Newey isn't so keen to go into that environment, and is therefore mostly keen, it seems, to go to Ferrari. Apparently, he gets on well with Zak Brown on a personal level, but Newey doubts the team can mobilise the resources required for success in Formula 1. So Newey apparently thinks that Toto's a fraud, and the car's, terrible. He doesn't really like Lawrence Stroll. He likes Zak Brown, but he doesn't think McLaren have got the minerals for this. So that leaves Ferrari. It's no secret they want him there. The key question, would he move to Maranello, or would he move there part-time and work partly remotely? I guess we don't really know. But if there is any observation that Newey has apparently made, it's that Ferrari makes the most sense. And also, that's what, Mr. Andrew Benson for the BBC said, that if there is one offer that he is taking most seriously, it is the offer from Ferrari. So very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. This would be quite the dagger to Mercedes in some sense if Newey doesn't want to join because he doesn't rate Toto and he thinks they're on such a downward spiral that with all his years experience in the sport he doesn't think it's a good idea. Mercedes themselves, there's rumours that they're looking to invest, whatever it takes to try and get back, sign Verstappen if they can, sign Newey if they can, remove loads of Red Bull engineers, bring them along with Max. That would be Mercedes' plan, and maybe if Merc could tell Newey, hey, look, we're going to do this. We're going to sign Max. We're going to bring in a lot of engineers that worked with him. Then maybe Newey would be more tempted. But if it's get Newey first and then use that as bait to get Max, that strategy is probably not going to work. Toto did actually deny that he's meeting with Max this weekend, because there were rumours that after Miami, they're planning to meet with Verstappen and his father and his manager. And Toto says, no, that's not true. These things happen behind closed doors. And that was just a rumour and completely made up. So not surprised Toto would deny this, but there's no doubt that Mercedes and Toto are still gauging Max Verstappen's availability. But if Newey doesn't rate Toto Wolff, then you got to wonder what Max might think about the whole situation. So massively intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.